Hello everybody and welcome to another Visualization Network how-to video. Today's topic, interactive area charts in Excel, but with no programming. I'm your host Tom Crawford, and let's just jump right in. Recently there was a great post by Nathan from Flowing Data who suggested there would be ways to create very interesting interactive charts using Flash or Flex. And they do come out nice, and there's lots of great things you can do with that. But unfortunately, many people in the audience don't know how to use Flash or Flex and also don't know how to program the necessary steps to make that happen, which can be moderately complex, but of course yield great results. So instead, this is an alternative to looking at how you can get many of the same benefits in Excel with no programming. So I want to say first that there are a few limitations that you'll see coming out of this. The first being that this doesn't necessarily work across platforms, so it's probably not going to work in Mac Excel, but it will work across most of the recent versions of Windows Excel, with the exception that the menus may change in the steps. But here's some of the things you can do. So for example, what if you wanted to see a 10% increase in the number of grapefruit, or 20%, or 30%? You can actually grow all the way up, in this case, to 200% the amount of grapefruit to see how that might impact. So doing what-if analysis, or going down. Or even, let's say apples are a very common fruit. Let's see how the graph changes if we, for the moment, ignore apples as part of the mix. You can see a pretty dramatic change in the flow. So by simply adding a few basic controls to our form, we can actually create some pretty powerful and interesting interactivity. So without further ado, let's jump in and find out actually how to do this. So first, you start off with well-formed data. Now by well-formed data, this is almost its own little mini video, but it basically means having all of the same types of data in the rows or columns. So in row A2, everything in this row is all about apples. In column E, everything in the column is all about January. There are no other data, there are no other pieces. So having well-formed data, everything is normalized. In addition, we have the graph already created. Now certainly a designer can come in and make this graph much prettier, but by having this start, you can then begin to manipulate it. So we're going to assume that the data is created and that the chart's created and go from there. So next is to to copy the data, because we don't want to necessarily work with the data that's here. We want to keep that intact in case we want to look at it in the future, because we don't want to manipulate these and then wonder what their original values were. So we're going to copy this data down, and then we're going to create 3 new columns, and these are going to be our control fields. In our control fields, we're going to have an on-off, a value, and a percentage. And you'll see why these become valuable in just a second. So we're going to set the on-off values to true, which by default for us will mean on, meaning they're going to be displayed in the chart. We're going to set the values by default to 100. Then we're going to create a quick little formula that says that value out of 100 gives you 100%. And we're going to copy that down for all of these. So pretty straightforward so far, but these are going to be the things that control our graph. In addition, we want to turn all of our data fields into formulas as well. So first thing we do is put in the equal sign, point to the cell that we want to do a formula on, and we're going to multiply it by the percentage, which in this case is here. And we're going to also multiply it by true. If it's false, that value, we'll just change it so you can see, that value goes to 0. So by just this little simple change, we can actually control the value of that field by controlling these values in columns A, B, and C. Now, we don't want to have to retype this formula across all of these, so a real quick modification to our formula will allow us to repeat that over and over and over again. So we'll just put in a simple reference to always look at C and always look at A, and then we can copy this formula and paste it to the entire range of values. Notice it's been pasted in every field, but we didn't have to change those values. They're all coordinated, so that makes our work very, very simple. So now if we change our value here to 110, it increased the values across the board by 10%, or 101, or 91, whatever value you want. We'll change it back to 100 to get started. So notice our original data is still all intact. We could paste more data on, add some more columns in the graph if we wanted to. But for now, we've got a functional lever to change the chart values. So now we simply need to go over to our chart itself and change the values in the chart. So we're going to select the data for the chart. So instead of using the static data that's already selected in the top, we're going to change the chart to look at the dynamic data that we have just created. Click OK, and now our chart is pointing at the new section of data.